Hi guys, you can only have an honest conversation with people if they themselves are going to be honest. Matthew Stadlen discovered this when he appeared on Reform UK MP Lee Anderson's GB News show. UKIPer Henry Bolton here tried to appear reasonable by demanding that Labour and the left condemn rioting on both sides. But then when his side was condemned for rioting, he seems to justify violence due to the fact that the people concerned with immigration don't have his style of platform. Bolton also suggests that the underlying issues related to the riots are not being addressed, but he's been dishonest here. Have a listen.
What I don't hear coming from the government, and what I don't hear coming from left activists and people like yourself, Matthew, is equal condemnation across the board. So condemn those riots by all means, but I would say two things, give you two pieces of advice. Condemn violence and criminal damage and obstruction of the highway.
Obstruction of the highway? What the hell is that about? Why are you trying to shoehorn in, for example, Just Stop Oil? You're comparing apples and oranges here. You're comparing people who try to burn down an asylum center or a hotel hosting asylum seekers with people who want to walk slowly on the motorway. We're off to a good start. The dishonesty is coming out pretty quickly.
Whoever is responsible, and make sure that when you do that, you also address the underlying concerns. The left were absolutely passionate about us addressing the concerns underlying the Black Lives Matter riots. Well, why doesn't the government actually acknowledge that it's entirely legitimate to have a concern, a worry, and anxiety about the rate of immigration and the impact on housing, public services, the rule of law, our politics, our culture, and our society, without, and you can do that entirely innocently, entirely justifiably, and the government is not going to take the wind out of sails. They might suppress the riots,
take a sip of your beer.
They're not going to deal with the problem unless they acknowledge that.
I'd be absolutely unequivocal, which is what I've been asking Lee to be. There is no place in our society for violence. There's no place for riots, whether that's Leeds, in Hare Hills, or anywhere else. And any violence that took place in those Black Lives Matter protests in 2020, I was on the radio covering them at the time on another broadcaster, any violence that took place is completely unacceptable. So you talk about underlying issues. I think it was absolutely right that what the government did, and as indeed what the courts have done, is crack down first and foremost on the appalling racist violence that we saw in those far-right riots of a couple of weeks ago. You say that we're not tackling, or that the government is not tackling, that we're not having a conversation. We're not having a conversation about what you describe as underlying issues.
How do you know
let me finish. Let me finish.
Who are these far-right people?
People, for example, who set fire to property around an asylum hotel, Lee. If that's not far-right, tell me what is. And let me finish my point. You talk about underlying issues. We've been talking about immigration almost non-stop for I don't know how many years. It was one of the key issues of the recent general election where every eligible adult in this country had a chance to vote. So don't tell me that we don't talk about underlying issues.
You're not
we
talking
absolutely
about it in relation to these problems. You're not.
I'm not interested in whether people are what people are motivated by. If they're motivated by concerns about immigration, doesn't give them the option to go and riot violently.
I didn't riot. I've got a legitimate concern. A lot of people.
And we discussed your concerns.
Yes, but a lot of people don't have this platform. A
lot of people don't have this platform, so it's justified. So it's okay for them to go out and riot. You can't condemn the left for rioting and then say, look, we should also condemn, the right for rioting, and then say, well, it's actually okay because they don't actually have a platform like mine. Now, he talked about underlying issues. Notice he didn't mention why Black Lives Matter were rioting, or people linked to Black Lives Matter were rioting. They were rioting. Well, what was the underlying issue that they were talking about was racism in the system. So they were demanding that the government address that. The people who were rioting and trying to burn down asylum centres, what was their underlying issue? Well, Henry says that it's about immigration and the related to housing or security or whatever. Well, who was responsible for that? Who's responsible for housing? The government. So the riots are being directed at people who have no power. The people in the asylum centre were being attacked, do they have any power? No, they don't. Do they have any influence? No, they don't. Do they decide if houses are built or not? No, they don't. Like, I'm against rioting. I'm supportive of legitimate protest. But if these people were truly concerned about immigration, why did they not organise a protest outside the Home Office? Why didn't they demand that the Conservative Party in the past build more houses? Not cut the police service. Invest in the NHS. So they claim to have legitimate concerns, but they're directing these concerns at the wrong people. They're directing them at people who have no power. Once again, if these people truly were concerned about how immigration is affecting housing, then why were they not protesting outside a government office? Where it's the government that decide these things. It's the government that decide whether houses are built, whether police officers are hired, whether police stations are closed down. For example, the Conservatives closed down a number of police stations. So the rioting was being directed at people who have no control over the system. The underlying concerns that he raised here, housing, security, all of these things, are the responsibility of the government. Why doesn't he tell the people rioting this? Why doesn't he say to them, look, it's pointless rioting and intimidating asylum seekers or foreigners. They have no control over this. The people who have control is the government. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.